On a Tuesday morning in July 2017, a Sri Lankan Navy patrol boat was running a routine sweep off the island's northeast coast when one of the sailors spotted something in the water that made no sense. Nearly 10 miles from shore, out in the open Indian Ocean, where the seafloor drops away into blue-black nothing, something large and grey was moving just below the surface. At first, they thought it was debris, maybe a capsized boat or a piece of wreckage. Then a long, dark tube broke through the waves, hung in the air for half a second, and disappeared again. Then it came back, and again, and again. It was a trunk, an elephant's trunk. A fully grown Asian elephant was out there, alone, nearly 10 miles from the nearest coastline, fighting for its life in the open ocean. Its entire body was submerged. The only thing keeping it alive was that trunk, rising above the surface every few seconds to pull in one desperate breath before the swells pushed it back under. The sailors immediately understood two things. First, this animal had been out here for hours, possibly since the middle of the night. And second, if they didn't act now, it was going to drown. What followed was one of the most extraordinary animal rescue operations ever attempted. The Navy dispatched a second patrol ship to the coordinates. Wildlife officials from the Department of Wildlife Conservation were called in and sent racing toward the coast. Navy divers suited up in full scuba gear, dropped into the open ocean, and swam toward a 5-ton animal that was panicking, exhausted, and thrashing in deep water. They had to get close enough to loop tow ropes around the elephant's body without getting kicked, crushed, or pulled under themselves. One diver actually climbed onto the elephant's back to try to calm it down and guide the ropes into position. For 12 hours, the team worked to tow the elephant back toward shore. 12 hours. They moved slowly, carefully, using 2 boats to pull the animal at a pace that wouldn't injure it or send it into deeper panic. As the sun dropped toward the horizon and the light started to fade, the team finally reached shallow water near the coast. The elephant's feet touched the bottom. It stood up, staggered forward through the surf, and walked back onto land. Wildlife officials took over from there, monitoring the animal before releasing it back into the jungle. The Navy had nicknamed it Jumbo, and they called the operation a miraculous escape. But here's the thing most people don't know. Nobody could fully explain why the elephant was out there. Officials believe it was trying to cross the Trincomalee Lagoon, a large stretch of water that sits between 2 areas of dense jungle. Elephants in Sri Lanka do this all the time, wading through shallow water to take shortcuts between patches of forest. But the lagoon feeds into the open ocean, and somewhere along the way, the current grabbed the elephant and dragged it out to sea. By the time the Navy found it, the animal had drifted nearly 10 miles from land. And this was not a one-time event. 11 days later, the Sri Lankan Navy rescued 2 more elephants from the same stretch of ocean. 2 of them this time, spotted by a patrol craft barely keeping their trunks above the waves, roughly 10 miles offshore, near the tourist destination of Trincomalee. It took 3 fast attack craft and a team of Navy divers 5 hours to rope them and tow them back. Once they hit shallow water, the pair walked straight into the Foul Point jungle and disappeared. Within 2 weeks, 3 separate elephants had been pulled from the open Indian Ocean. This raises a question that sounds absurd until you actually think about it. Can elephants swim? And the answer might be one of the most surprising facts in all of zoology. Elephants are, by a significant margin, the best swimmers of any land mammal on Earth. Not one of the best, the best. Joyce Poole, co-founder of Elephant Voices and one of the world's leading elephant researchers, told National Geographic that elephants should be considered the best swimmers of any land mammal, perhaps excluding trained human swimmers. Think about that for a second. A 5-ton animal with legs like tree trunks and no obvious aquatic adaptation is a better swimmer than dogs, horses, bears, or big cats. Their secret is a combination of biology that seems almost purpose-built for water. Elephants have enormous lung capacity, which gives them natural buoyancy. Their bodies don't sink the way you'd expect a 10,000-pound animal to sink. They float. Their four massive legs work like paddles, moving in a steady rhythmic motion that generates consistent forward propulsion. And then there's the trunk, a 5-foot breathing tube that works as a natural snorkel. When an elephant is fully submerged, it simply raises its trunk above the surface and keeps breathing. It can swim indefinitely without ever needing to surface for air. The longest recorded elephant swim is roughly 48 kilometers, about 30 miles, in a single session. That's further than most humans could manage even with training. African elephants in Botswana's Okavango Delta have been documented swimming between islands over deep water as part of their normal seasonal movement. And biologists believe that elephants originally reached Sri Lanka itself by swimming across the Palk Strait from mainland India, a distance of about 25 miles of open ocean. Not thousands of years ago, not during some geological event, just swimming across. But no story captures the relationship between elephants and the sea more powerfully than the story of Rajan. Rajan was born in the 1950s in India. As a young elephant, he was shipped to the Andaman Islands, a remote archipelago in the Bay of Bengal, to work in the timber logging industry. The British colonial administration had been importing elephants to the Andamans since 1858, using them to haul felled trees through the jungle and transport timber between islands. And to move logs from one island to another, the elephants had to swim through open ocean, over water more than 100 meters deep, carrying timber on their backs. Over the years, some of these elephants didn't just tolerate swimming, they loved it. And Rajan became the most famous of all. He would walk into the Caribbean blue waters of the Bay of Bengal and disappear beneath the surface, his trunk cutting through the waves like a periscope, while his enormous body glided underneath, visible through the clear tropical water like a grey submarine. But the part of Rajan's story that no one forgets is the love story. Early in his years on the Andamans, Rajan met a female elephant. She was the one who taught him how to swim in the open ocean. The two of them would walk side by side into the warm water every evening, playing and swimming together as the sun went down. They stayed together for 20 years. Then she was bitten by a cobra, and she died. Rajan was, by every account, devastated. He continued to live on Havelock Island. He continued to swim in the ocean. But according to everyone who knew him, something had changed. The locals said he was heartbroken. When logging was banned in the Andamans in 2002, most elephants were shipped back to the mainland. Rajan stayed. A resort on Havelock adopted him, and he spent his final years swimming in the sea, eating tropical fruit, and being photographed by filmmakers and tourists from around the world who came specifically to see the last ocean-swimming elephant. Rajan died in 2016 at approximately 66 years old. He was buried deep beneath the jungle floor on the island where he'd spent most of his life. He was the last of his kind. Now, the reason Rajan's story hits so hard isn't just because it's sad. It's because it reveals something about elephants that most people still haven't fully absorbed. These animals aren't just large, they aren't just smart, they are emotionally complex in ways that rival human beings. Elephant brains contain over 300 billion neurons. Their cerebral cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex thought, is similar in structure and complexity to that of humans. They possess spindle neurons, a specialized brain cell previously only found in humans, great apes, and cetaceans like dolphins and whales. These cells are associated with empathy, social awareness, and the ability to process emotional pain. Elephants are among the only non-human animals that have them. And what elephants do with that emotional capacity when confronted with death is one of the most haunting things ever documented in the animal kingdom. When an elephant dies, the herd gathers around the body. They touch it with their trunks, running them slowly over the face, the ears, the mouth. They try to lift it. They push food toward it. They stand in silence for hours, ears drooping, tails hanging, heads lowered. Researchers have described it as looking like a funeral. The elephants aren't just curious, they appear to be grieving. They bury their dead, not metaphorically, They physically cover the bodies of fallen members with grass, leaves, and tree branches, and they return to the bones. Months later, sometimes years later, elephants will travel long distances to revisit the place where a family member died and touch the skeleton with their trunks. Studies have shown they can distinguish between the skulls of elephants and those of other species. Some researchers believe they can recognize the bones of specific individuals. Mark Beckhoff, one of the leading experts on animal behavior, once observed a herd after the death of their matriarch. Their heads were down, ears drooping, tails hanging listlessly, he wrote. They were just walking here and there, moping around, apparently broken-hearted. If you're finding this fascinating, hit subscribe. I cover stories like this every week. Which brings us to the worst part of this story, because the same emotional intelligence that makes elephants capable of love, grief, and mourning is also what makes them capable of dying for each other. In October 2019, a herd of elephants was moving through Khao Yai National Park in Thailand when a 3-year-old calf slipped at the edge of a waterfall called Haew Narok. In Thai, that name translates to Hell's Abyss. The calf tumbled over the edge and drowned in the pool below. Park officials heard elephants crying out in distress around 3 a.m. When they reached the waterfall at dawn, they found the calf's body half submerged in the first tier. Below it, in the ravine beneath the falls, they found 5 more dead elephants, all adults. All of them had gone over the edge trying to reach the calf. The initial death toll was 6. Then they sent up drones and found 5 more bodies further downstream, washed away by the current. 11 elephants dead, an entire herd destroyed in a single night, because every single one of them chose to jump into a waterfall trying to save a baby that was already gone. 2 elephants from the herd survived. They were found standing on the cliff edge above the waterfall, alive but trapped. Officials used ropes and pineapples and sugarcane to lure them to safety. One of the 2 survivors is believed to have been the mother of the calf. Edwin Veek, founder of the Wildlife Friends Foundation Thailand, was asked what would happen to those 2 survivors. He said they would likely struggle to survive, not physically, emotionally. Elephants depend on the social bonds of the herd for protection, for food, for psychological stability. Losing that many family members at once is, in his words, like losing half your family. The same waterfall killed 8 elephants in 1992. And here's something that will shift how you think about all of this. Elephants and the ocean aren't just connected by accident, by lagoon currents and unlucky crossings. They're connected by evolution. The elephant's closest living relatives aren't other land mammals. They're manatees and dugongs, sea cows, gentle, slow-moving marine herbivores that live in warm coastal waters and spend their entire lives submerged. Elephants and sea cows share a common ancestor that lived roughly 60 million years ago, a primitive hoofed mammal that eventually split into 2 branches. One went back to the sea and became the Sirenians. The other stayed on land and became the Proboscideans, the lineage that leads to modern elephants. The evidence is written in their bodies. Manatees have vestigial toenails on their flippers that look almost identical to the nails on an elephant's feet. Both have the same unusual heart shape, round and spherical, rather than the typical pointed heart seen in most mammals. Both are herbivores with similar tooth structures, and in 2012, researchers examining the teeth of Muratherium, a tapir-sized proto-elephant that lived 37 million years ago in what is now Egypt, discovered that the creature lived a semi-aquatic life, spending significant time in shallow coastal waters and estuaries. The ancestor of every elephant that ever lived spent its days in the water. When that Sri Lankan Navy patrol boat spotted Jumbo 10 miles out to sea, trunk breaking the surface of the Indian Ocean, pulling in breath after desperate breath, the sailors saw an animal in crisis. And it was. But in another sense, they were watching an animal doing something its lineage has been doing for 60 million years, returning to the water. Not because it wanted to, because somewhere, written deep in its DNA, buried under 37 million years of land-based evolution, the sea still calls. Sri Lanka's elephant population has fallen roughly 65% since the turn of the century. Asian elephants are classified as endangered. Deforestation is shrinking their habitat every year, forcing them into smaller and smaller patches of jungle connected by narrowing corridors. When those corridors get cut off, the elephants try to cross water, and sometimes the water is deeper than they expected. Sometimes the current is stronger, sometimes they don't make it. Jumbo made it. Those two elephants near Trincomalee made it. The herd at Haew Narok did not, and Rajan, the last ocean-swimming elephant, made it for 66 years before the ocean finally let him go. There are roughly 40,000 Asian elephants left in the wild. Every single one of them carries a brain complex enough to grieve, a heart shaped like no other land mammals, vestigial traces of an aquatic ancestor in its anatomy, and the ability to swim 30 miles through open ocean, using nothing but the trunk evolution gave it as a snorkel. They remember their dead. They mourn them. They return to their bones. And sometimes, when the jungle runs out, they walk into the sea.